Hi, my name is Chris Koneski. I'm the editor of the Des Moines Business Record. We're here today to talk a little bit about the manufacturing industry in Iowa. To do that, we've gathered a group of business leaders from the industry to talk a little bit about the current climate and some of the opportunities and challenges ahead in 2014 and beyond. The format is a little bit like our Power Breakfast, if you've been to one of those before, but it'll be slightly different. You know, one of the things we do before those events is we bring all our panelists into this conference room, and we talk about the challenge kind of informally and talk about different topics related to our topic. And that's sometimes where some of the best discussion happens. And so I'm going to address the camera right here, and from this point forward, we're going to have a discussion amongst ourselves, and we're inviting you to listen in on that. And Joe's going to write a story based on our discussion today as well. So thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the peek into manufacturing in Iowa. With us today are Rob Denson, president of Des Moines Area Community College; Steve LaRue, president and CEO of RICO Solutions; Mike Ralston, president of Iowa Association of Business and Industry; and Andy Hansen, factory manager of John Deere Des Moines Works. And I understand you've been here a few months now, right?
That's correct.
All right, now I'll turn it over to our reporter Joe Gardiaz. He's been with us for over 10 years, and he covers health and wellness, finance and insurance, energy and utilities, and of course manufacturing. So take it away, Joe.
Okay, well, thank you all for being here today, and we selected this group obviously because of the breadth of knowledge that you have in various aspects of advanced manufacturing. And I wanted to start off by just asking generally for our audience, why is a vibrant advanced manufacturing sector important to Iowa and greater Des Moines? And Mike, I wonder if you might help us off with just talking about generally how you see it from your organizations and members' perspective.
You bet, Joe. First, thanks very much to the Business Record for focusing on manufacturing. It's so important in Iowa. You've got a couple great manufacturers here and a great education and business leader in Rob, and so this is a terrific forum. Thank you. Here's why manufacturing is important to Central Iowa and Greater Iowa. Really, we're a statewide organization with about 1,300 members. Manufacturing provides the best jobs. It creates innovation, which spawns other jobs. Manufacturing is important to Iowa's economy, but it's important because of what those economic things mean for Iowa citizens. That's why manufacturing is important, is what I'd say.
And many people may not realize that manufacturing is such a large sector of the economy as well.
Yeah, that's really surprised me. I'm relatively new to the state of Iowa. Came here just about 3 years ago, and certainly understood agriculture was an important part of the economy here in the state of Iowa. Had no idea that manufacturing composes 20% of the gross national product of the state of Iowa. Just amplifying on what Mike was sharing, there's a couple, I think, very important reasons why we need to continue to have a robust manufacturing sector here in the state of Iowa. The first, as Mike pointed out, the jobs typically are much higher paying jobs. According to the National Association of Manufacturers, the average manufacturing job pays approximately $77,000, which is 28% higher than the average job in America today. The other important factor, and this is, I think, particularly important when you have larger employers, companies like John Deere, is the multiplier effect. For every dollar that is generated in manufacturing revenue, there's another $1.48 of incremental revenue of supporting infrastructure to support large employers and manufacturers like RICO or John Deere. Those are two very, very important economic statistics that point to the reason why you want to have a robust manufacturing environment within the state.
And Andy, can you tell me a little bit about your perspective at Deere's plant in Ankeny and the growth that your company is seeing?
Yeah,
there?
Absolutely, Joe. So first, I agree with all the comments. I think outstanding points, and it's one of the reasons I'm biased in favor of manufacturing, because that's one of the ways that we really create value, and the economic multiplier that comes along with that is just incredible. John Deere, we've had explosive growth really over the last 5 years as we have as every large farmer has purchased their own large sprayer, the demand is on a geometric progression. Won't be that way forever, but we've been on a great run, really the entire company in North America.
And in terms of the multiplier effect that we're talking about, as I understand it, there are just a lot of supplier companies that people may not be aware of that are both here in greater Des Moines area plus around the state that are feeding into the supply chain for deer. So that must be a pretty significant thing for Iowa as well.
Absolutely is, and that's what drives the multiplier that Steve referred to. We have core competencies at John Deere Des Moines Works as well as all our John Deere factories. There's a lot of manufacturing processes that we choose not to invest in because we can't be experts at each and every one of them. We have to choose the ones where we can create the most value, that have strategic importance to our equipment and our customers. And then we look to suppliers to provide processes like injection molding, for example. And I'll just give you one name, AccuMold in Ankeny has grown a terrific business over the last 25 years. And not necessarily just supplying to John Deere, but to other manufacturers throughout the Midwest, in fact, throughout the world now.
I think Iowans would be surprised to realize that manufacturing, I think it's still #1 growth state product in Iowa. You automatically think of ag. Manufacturing is big. We're a diverse manufacturing environment. In 2008 and 9, during the automobile recession, we were invited to be a part of a national consortium of auto communities impacted by the decline in the auto industry. And everybody says, you know, why Iowa? Well, we had over 100 companies in Iowa that supply the auto industry as part of their business. So we were clearly impacted by that, but because our companies are so diverse and the ag manufacturing area was so strong, many of them shifted into other areas. We're resilient, if nothing else. So it continues to be extremely strong. And we talk about STEM education. I mean, STEM is kind of the education, word of the decade. And manufacturing is all about STEM. And when you've got streams of water now being used to cut steel, I mean, something that doesn't even make sense. I mean, it's just amazing the technology and the computer work that we've got in the whole ag sector, in the whole ag and manufacturing sectors.
Okay. Maybe I could ask, go toward a question of sort of the opportunities that the growth in advanced manufacturing really presents for both within the industry and for other industries. Along those lines, what sectors of manufacturing seem to be seeing the most growth, and perhaps what are some reasons behind that growth? And then perhaps we could talk about the areas that perhaps need some more attention. Any thoughts on that?
So I'd be happy to start with that. Obviously, lasers and robotics, where we have a heavy dependency on institutions like DMAC to provide those kinds of skills for our employees, growing and will continue to grow at, I think, an incredible pace. There's also additive manufacturing technologies that we would call 3D printers or copiers, which really are going to democratize a lot of the manufacturing process, and I think support some startup companies that we also need to make sure get their start in Iowa, because the barrier to entry is so much lower and will be in the future than it has been traditionally.
You're going right into Joe's working on a story on 3D printing right now that will actually publish before this video comes out. So, but it's a topic I know Joe wanted to touch on. So,
yes. If you think about the one thing that drives successful manufacturing companies, it's innovation, the ability to stay ahead of the curve, ahead of your competition, especially overseas competition. There are certain countries, China for example, that do a great job of following and figuring out products that we've developed here in the States, how to manufacture them less expensively and distribute them. So innovation, staying ahead of that power curve, is really important. Technologies like 3D printing accelerates the prototyping process. Other things that can help are artificial intelligence in your machining technology, so that you can more rapidly set up for rapid prototyping. Will help us be able to stay ahead of the marketplace, bring new innovation to the marketplace, and keep American manufacturing strong and vibrant.
Artificial intelligence, it's just interesting to me. How does that work in manufacturing?
Well, you have computer-controlled technology today, right? And so one of the challenges you have is when you have to set up your NC equipment for a new run, for a new product, for example, that requires a lot of engineering time. If you could have AI capability so that the machines can learn from the processes they're going for and anticipate and begin to make those modifications to what we call the recipe, which is used for running these NC equipment, and do that in an automated fashion, that's going to dramatically reduce your setup time and allow you to be able to do rapid prototyping.
I think that's a great point, Steve, and it also enables feed-forward process controls. Typically, we've relied on feedback where we produce something, we look at the specifications, did we meet them or not, and then we adjust the NC program. Not accounting for variation in the raw materials that goes into the machining center. As we have AI embedded in that machine software, now we can start to think about how do we feed that characteristics of the raw material that's now going into there and define the variations so that the machines can take that into account and tweak their programs before they even get started.
Well, I have a feeling I'm going to be doing a lot of nodding today. One of the things I want to talk about today too is innovation, Steve. And you know, Steve's company, Ryco, is an industry leader in innovation. Everybody talks about quality, but it's that innovation, not only in products but processes, like you're talking about, that makes a difference. Deere & Company, a long time leader in innovation, and everybody thinks about products, but again, it's some of those processes and that tear down and putting back together is so important. Innovation and everything is so important. We do it well here in Iowa. We need to do more of it.
I wonder, when we talk about innovation in manufacturing, oftentimes with new revolutions in technology, there can be an impact on jobs created. That with new technologies comes the need for perhaps less manpower or higher skilled manpower. And how are some of these changes unfolding such that they're changing the labor manpower requirements in Iowa?
Well, that's where the community colleges are so important. DMAC is a leader of the community colleges all over the state, do a great job in that skill quotient. Joe, really, a lot of manufacturers around the state worry about having enough workers or having the workers with the right skills and training, and we're lucky in Iowa. There are a number of things that are in place to help with that. Community colleges lead the way. Their programs, we have a program at ABI called Elevate. There's a program the state of Iowa has, Skilled Iowa Initiative. I don't think we have to worry about not having enough jobs, no matter how much innovation takes place. We need workers in Iowa.
And that's the single largest constraint that we face today in expanding our manufacturing capabilities in the state of Iowa is access to the properly trained, skilled workforce to be able to take advantage of and leverage this advanced manufacturing technology that we're deploying.
We had a panel on STEM just recently on Monday, and so these areas intersect so well. And one of the things that Gary Schulten from Principal was talking about, he's the Chief Information Officer there, he said that a lot of the Chief Information Officers from around the state are actually hedging their bets into 2014 and saying we could do more, we could keep growing, but we can't because we don't have the people. Is that something you guys are seeing in manufacturing?
Yeah, absolutely.
All over the state, certainly here too.
So the solution, or one of the solutions, is we need to do a better job of mining the labor skills of some of the diverse communities that we have. I mean, we've done a good job, but with an unemployment rate under 4.5%, we're very close to full employment. So, but we still got pockets of immigrants. We've got a Burmese community in Des Moines, 500 or 600, many of whom come here with welding skills in a time when we need more welders. So we're developing special programs to give them their English language skills and welding skills to upgrade them and then get them into jobs. We're looking at Latinos, the Latinos will be the largest minority if they're not already. They'll very soon, and so that's a community with great work ethic. So we need to let them know the advantages of continuing education and hiring education to pick up those job skills. You know, we know that 60% or more of the jobs in Iowa require more than high school, but no more than a 2-year degree. So that's right in the wheelhouse of the community colleges. So we really train the majority of Iowa's workers. So what Iowa needs to do, and we've got the companies, and they're going to grow if they've got the workforce to grow, because we've got a statewide emphasis on innovation, on growth, entrepreneurship, etc. So all the materials are available, but the workforce is the one where we're going to have the largest challenge. And it's all about people. You know, every one of these products that everyone makes, there's a person behind that somewhere that either pushed a button or ran a computer or swept the floor or something. I mean, it's all about workforce. So the job's there. So what I think Iowa needs to do is we need to develop very, high-skilled education and training centers, and many of the community colleges are already at that level. And then we need to begin to recruit more and more individuals from all over the world to come here, receive the training, and take advantage of these jobs. I mean, the Home Base Iowa program that General Orr is pushing out with the governor. I mean, bringing veterans here. I mean, if that will grab hold, I mean, you've got the work ethic, you've got the leadership skills, the training, and many of them come in with a lot of great competencies and skills. So that will be a nice jump start, but we need to go way beyond that if we're going to meet the needs. And as we have less workers on a particular section of the floor doing a job, those workers that are displaced are going to have other jobs. I mean, we really need to have some of that happen so that a worker who may work for one company now would have a great opportunity in another company, and so all ships rise.
Rob, I think the other thing, and we didn't touch on it earlier, about why manufacturing is important in Iowa. We need to sell manufacturing and inspire people to see manufacturing in their future. You know, we can create real value. We can take pride in what we do on the shop floor. And to your point, you know, we don't have to have an advanced or, postgraduate degree from a university in order to do that. In order to have a solid middle-class life, be able to raise a family in Iowa, and Steve, I know you're new to Iowa relatively, but there's no better place to raise a family than the state of Iowa.
That's why we moved here.
And we haven't sold that to kids in high schools and junior highs so they understand and can have that vision of what they could become as they grow up and graduate.
That's what our Elevate campaign is all about. You've got a good one there.
Well, and Andy and I had this conversation within the last month. I mean, we need to get young people into these companies. I mean, because of the laws and the liability issues, my 5-year-old grandson is probably never going to see the inside of John Deere. But if we could get him to go through as a 5, 6, 7-year-old, by the time he gets to be 13, when he can legally be in the plant, he's probably going to be off on many other things. But to go in there now and just see the rocket science that's going on in that building. I mean, the same as Ryco or Accumold. No company surviving today doing it the way our grandfathers did. No. We were just at a speaker this morning at the Farm Bureau convention, and he said, nobody farms like our grandfathers did, but yet a lot of the general public thinks it's happening. People think that manufacturing is, like it used to be, whatever the vision is, but it's nothing like it is today. But we need to get our young people in those facilities at a younger age so they can get excited about it and then say, okay, if I'm going to be in that kind of a job, what do I need? And their STEM skills. Right? So that makes education make sense to young kids.
Absolutely.
You mentioned a program that
Well, boy, all three of these fellas are saying it exactly the right way. All across the state, we come across places, Chris, where people think manufacturing is like it was 100 years ago. These are dark, dirty facilities, low tech, and it's just the opposite. So we want to elevate the image of manufacturing, not only so that people know what it is, but also so that they think about it as a career. And as everybody has said, it's a very clean, high-tech environment. It's a place that provides great incomes. It's a dynamic place, and that's what we're trying to do with this Elevate campaign. Elevate the image of manufacturing and then connect workers with jobs that are already there waiting for them.
Yeah, DMAC and the community college system received a $13 million grant a year and a half ago. We partnered with ABI we're the lead college, but it's every community college working on their district to expand capacity to supply workers into the manufacturing sector. And so we're focused on better curriculum, shorter curriculum, more articulation where it needs to be, and then working directly with the companies. So our focus is on adult age, but we're using the same videos, websites, et cetera, to work with ABI to get into those high schools and middle schools, because that's where we've got to create the excitement. And schools need to have a better understanding of what the businesses in their districts do. We had a tour last year where our 55 school districts, they meet in regions of 5 and 6. So we would invite into those meetings the businesses that are right down the road from these schools, and oftentimes the schools were surprised at what's really going on inside that building, you know, a mile away. But the manufacturers were able to say, look, if you don't let your kids be exposed to this kind of, to these jobs, you know, we're relying on them. I mean, it's not just kids coming out of school, but that's a big piece of our future workforce.
That's right. Over 60% of our factory workforce is retirement age eligible today.
Wow.
60%.
That's dramatic.
And it's critically important that we bring these young people into the manufacturing process. And one of the challenges that we have at RICA with this older workforce is that as we try to bring a lot of this new technology into the factory floor, especially the digital technology, it's really challenging because we're finding the older workforce is not computer literate. They're not comfortable with these new digital tools, whereas the younger workforce, they're going to be very comfortable with it. So you're absolutely spot on. We have to figure out a way to, in a very comprehensive fashion, start to create a much higher level of interest in manufacturing, because it is not the same factory your grandfather worked in.
For sure. You know, even that said, Steve, the Elevate initiative that you described, that's my story. June 26, 1963 is when I determined that I wanted to be in manufacturing. I was 10 years old and toured John Deere Des Moines Works. And the reason I know that date and year is because after my dad passed away, going through the things in his house, I found my Cub Scout scrapbook, and I had documented that tour, and I can still picture where I was in the building when I decided, yeah, manufacturing is what I want to do. Now, it took me a while to get there, but you know, it doesn't take a lot to catch a kid's attention and help them start to envision what they could become and how much fun they could really have during the course of their career.
Yeah, 10-year-olds can't get in anymore.
No, they can't, but 12-year-olds can. So, you know, and my only point is that we can catch kids' attention even before they get to high school, for sure.
Again, it came up in the STEM discussion of that light bulb kind of, that's the best. Sometimes, especially at that age, you really don't know what you can or want to do in any way. So if the light bulb goes on just a little bit, it's amazing what that can do.
Yeah.
And especially when we talk a lot about the, you know, I don't know, pressure's the right word, but to go to a four-year college and get the degree.
Pressure, I think.
And that's the normal path you're supposed to go in a lot of people's mind. And I think that's, for the kids that aren't going to necessarily go that route, knowing that there's some really good options that aren't the 4-year, I think is really important.
But it's how you start. We've got student debt issues, so if a kid can come out of high school within a year or two, pick up a very high skill, get a good job, they can always go on to school. Mm-hmm. Nearly every program, every company has some kind of tuition reimbursement. Mm-hmm. So, and it's best if our population becomes more and more educated, and it's lifetime learning. But you've got to start somewhere, and rather than pile up tons of debt, if you can be working while you're going to school, it benefits everyone, as well as yourself.
Mm-hmm. Along the lines of this, are there particular when you dig down a little bit into where the needs are on the factory floors, are there particular high demand or high need areas that just aren't being filled, that you're seeing at RICO and at Deere right now, that would translate into more training needs down the road for these students that are entering the workforce?
Yeah. Well, I think Andy touched on a couple of them. The welding, the machinist, we've just doubled our fabrication department's capacity with lasers, and it's really challenging to find someone that has the skill set to be able to operate a sophisticated laser today. So it's the machinist skills, advanced machinist skills, and the welding skills are two areas of particular need.
Absolutely, I agree with that, and I would add process controls so that we can take 3 Sigma people, and we're all 3 Sigma capable as people, but our customers expect 6 Sigma products, and the only way to bridge that gap is through mistake proofing, which implies process controls that takes some pretty clear and critical thinking as well.
I think I've heard of 6 Sigma, but were you being a little euphemistic in saying 3 Sigma?
No, not at all, Joe. People are 3 Sigma capable, which means about 98% of the time they'll produce the correct result. 6 Sigma, as you know, is less than 4 defects per million. So that's a huge chasm. Yeah.
Actually, I didn't know that.
Okay. Well,
And so there's a little bit of a gap there.
yeah, so you know that huge chasm, and the irony is that people can bridge that chasm, even though individually we're only 3 Sigma capable. We have the capability working in teams to create mistake proofing and put process controls in place in order to generate those 6 Sigma results.
In addition to welding and tool and die and machinists, we need anything IT. I mean, so much in our companies is run by some kind of a computer program, so having that kind of understanding. And then industrial maintenance. I mean, we probably hear that as much from all of our companies, which is a generalist position that can fix these machines and keep them running and maintained and doing that kind of ongoing repair are big. So, and a lot of our companies don't have time for us to put workers through a 2-year training program. So we're looking at ways with our Elevate campaign to do shorter chunking of degrees so that they pick up enough skill that they can get to work and then often continue their education while they're working. And it's amazing how many companies now, Acumol, Deere, Vermeer, and others are working on scholars programs with us where they will help us select students to go start in the program, often supporting some of their tuition, but then giving them a job while they're going to school. And the value of a student working in the field they're studying in is immeasurable. I mean, because not only is it good for the student, good for the company, but it's good for the rest of the class. As someone comes back into class every day with a real life experience that they can relate to whatever the academic instruction happens to be in that particular moment.
That's right. In fact, that's a really good point. I had an all-hands meeting, a company-wide meeting earlier this week, and one of the commitments I made to the entire organization is that we're going to double down on our investment in training. RICO is a relatively small company. Our revenues are just a little over $100 million a year, but we invest $1 million a year in employee training. And we're finding that that's not even sufficient. 1% of sales is not sufficient in terms of our commitment to training. We need to do more. And one of the commitments I made, especially to the folks on the factory floor, is we've got to double down on our effort to help them keep their skills current. That does a couple things. First of all, it makes that employee a whole heck of a lot more valuable to us as long as they're with us. But it also assures them a very prosperous career in manufacturing, because as they continue to hone their skills, they become much more marketable. So I think it's a win-win for both the employee as well as the employer to make a big investment in training.
That's a real commitment to employees on the part of RICO, and there are companies all over the state that do similar things. I don't know if they've made that size of commitment, but it's terrific. I think employers in this state, especially manufacturers maybe, understand that their greatest asset is their employees. They're really partners in these companies, and that's why we hope more people come to Iowa too. They'll find that they have a better relationship with their employer here than they might some other place.
Right.
I wonder along these lines too, if there are there enough internship opportunities in your view? Is part of the equation getting students into these companies as interns more so perhaps than is happening right now? Is that a good?
I think that's a great question, Joe. And the answer is, I don't know that we'll ever have enough internship opportunities because they're so beneficial not only to the student but to the companies as well as bring those real life experiences into the DMAC classroom, for example. So that's something that we might work on together, is to show companies and share why we think they're so valuable.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. When I came to RICO 3 years ago, one of the areas that we needed to invest in was in the area of R&D. And we had allowed, under the previous ownership, they had allowed the R&D department to begin to atrophy. And so we made a commitment. We were going to triple the size of our engineering organization. And there's a really fine engineering school that you guys have probably heard of just north of us, called Iowa State. And so we decided what we're going to do is we're going to go after the Iowa State graduates, and we put together an internship program, fully paid, five interns, and within the 3 years that I've been here, we've been able to fully staff our engineering team, and many of the folks that joined our organization were through that internship program where we were able to attract really sharp, young, undergraduate engineering students from Iowa State to come down, learn about the car wash business, which, let's say, that's not a very romantic business. I mean, I can't
you ever gone to a date in a dirty car?
There you go, exactly. But you know, I tell people I'm in the car wash business, so that's nice, and they'll turn to the next person. So what do you do? But yeah, there's a lot of technology, a lot of interesting challenges, engineering challenges in our industry. And once these young people get into the program, they have an opportunity to learn about the company and the industry through the internship programs. They get enamored with it, and we're able to retain them. I hadn't thought about the fact that that's something we really ought to think about when we look at the factory floor as well.
But we think internships are so important. We've hired one person that works out of the administrative suite at DMAC, and her job is to go in and work to develop more internships. And as we talk to companies, more and more of them are setting up internships where students can work for really as much as they want to work. And there are several companies that if you work more than 1,000 hours over the period of a year, they'll actually contribute toward a tuition reimbursement, so they'll actually help contribute back toward your tuition. So I mean, and again, and that company knows they're building loyalty. I mean, and I know RICO has got a great internship program because you pay very well and you provide great benefits for those interns. I mean, and their talent, I mean, and good talent, just like you do with your full-time people, you've got to treat them well. And if they develop loyalty and an understanding of a company and they like the team environment, they're going to stay. Why would they go anywhere else if they're being treated well? And our Iowa companies do that.
This is an area where Iowa companies lead. I think the Deere internship program is legendary. The RICO, as you talked about, Rob, Prince Walton, not a manufacturer, they have a great one. DuPont Pioneer does. But maybe this is an area where we need to give some credit to the state. They've created a new internship program about 3 or 4 years ago that pays 2/3 of an intern's wage. The company gets to choose the intern. Aljon, in your former town of Tumwa, is somebody that succeeded with these interns, and so I think there are some great things going on when it comes to internships. But I think Andy had it right. I suppose we'll never have enough. I mean, we can always use more.
Yeah, Joe, I would add one other thing, and it's something that we did at John Deere Tumble Works, where I just came from. We created externships. And for example, we had 2 high school science teachers work at John Deere Tumble Works for the summer. Real world projects where they create value, but then they take those experiences back to the classroom and can reference them as they're teaching their next year's classes.
That's great. That's a great idea.
Well, before I even knew that Mike was going to be here today, you know, one of the notes is, I mean, we're well organized. We've got a great legislature, and the governor, obviously, he's focused on economic development. But you need an organization like ABI as the statewide face of manufacturing to continue to be at the Capitol in D.C. To promote this. And what ABI does with the Leadership Iowa for the adults, Business Horizons for young people in the K-12 system, Leadership Iowa University for community college and university students. I mean, they're educating this whole new generation of leaders, and there are a lot of successful leaders in Iowa who went through Leadership Iowa particularly. So to have that be the face of manufacturing and other industries that are ABI members, I mean, it's important.
I don't know what this plug is going to cost me, but I'm grateful.
It is.
Thank you, but ABI loves to work with you, companies like Deere and Ryco and others, we all want the same thing. We all want good jobs. We all want good. And the great thing is there's so much happening in Iowa when it comes to manufacturing. Really, there's a lot going on.
Well, and Iowa's special because most of us know each other and like each other. I mean, we didn't come here to meet each other today. I mean, we see each other several times a year. We're involved in the DC trip with a Greater Marine Partnership or ABI or something. And I think for the most part, throughout Iowa, you've got people that like each other, that trust each other, and we all believe in the same thing. And on top of that, Iowa is a special place. Historically, so many amazing things have started in Iowa. And again, it's all about the people.
Well, that's a good segue why we were changing tapes to, see if you're from outside of the state, and you said you're from Newport, California?
Yeah, from Southern California. So 3 years ago, my wife and I decided we had 8 and 10-year-old children. We decided we were not going to raise those kids with the distractions of Southern California. We decided we wanted to come back to the Midwest. Started looking at opportunities. I'm originally from Wisconsin, so I kind of had a bias towards where we might want to move, like Madison. And by the way, I discovered that Des Moines reminds me a lot of Madison. There's a lot of similarity beyond the state capital. But the opportunity at Ryco presented itself, and we moved here, and we have just found that this has been a wonderful place to raise a family. It's a wonderful place in terms of being able to build a business because it's, as you pointed out, it's just there's really great people here. There's the right climate. The governor here and the legislature have created the right kind of climate for business. And so we found this to be an absolutely amazing experience. My wife is a New Yorker. So, the first time I made a fatal mistake. I picked her up at the airport. Instead of taking the route into the city, I came around the 5. And so you can imagine, as I'm driving and I got onto the 5, I have my 2 kids from Southern California and both born in Newport Beach, and my wife from New York, and they've got their noses on the window, and it's stone silent. I'm going, oh, this was a big mistake. Fast forward 6 months later, my wife is telling me this is home. She really loves Iowa. It's a great place.
It's interesting. 30 plus years ago, Des Moines' tagline was Des Moines, a surprising place. Right. And you know what? We have definitely grown into that. There's so much going on in this metro area and throughout the state, but obviously anchored in the Des Moines metro area.
So I wanted to ask, in talking about Des Moines, in preparing for this, I had sent each of you just a short article that we did about Rooster Sports, a high-tech company making composite bicycles here in downtown Des Moines, and it seems like a great example of a small industry that can really get going, small manufacturing that can get going here in Des Moines. Are we seeing more examples like this around Des Moines that you're hearing about, or what are some potentials there for small manufacturing?
Joe, I think we're going to see this throughout the state. And to Rob's comment earlier about we know each other, TJ Tallickson, the owner of that business, and my son grew up together. TJ was in the Cub Scout pack that I led in Aiken. And Rick and Nan, his parents, I know them well. So it really is neat to see the network that we can develop. But some of this gets back to the new technologies that we talked about. 3D printing is an example. And the low cost of that sort of technology and how it democratizes innovation, really. Because a single person using current technology that's not expensive, sending digital designs through the web and putting it out on the cloud for somebody else to pick up and could actually do the manufacturing. It's just an incredible time for somebody to get into manufacturing, and maybe they design a brand new component that Ryco needs that enables innovation now within Ryco. So that turns into an incredibly virtuous cycle over time.
That's right. Most people, when you think about manufacturing, you'll think about companies like John Deere or Boeing. You think about these large corporations. It's interesting, according to the National Association of Manufacturers, 75% of manufacturers are taxed at the individual federal tax rate. Why? Because they're small businesses. They're founder-owned businesses. And so the example that you cite with the composite bicycle, that is a lot more common than people think. That's where the real growth is taking place. You know, I know that you guys employ a ton of people up there at the Ankeny Works, but where the real growth is in terms of employment is with these smaller manufacturers who are just starting up, and they represent, I think, the real future for not just the state of Iowa, but for our country, because they're going to be driving innovation and driving employment.
It makes me wonder how much perhaps the entrepreneurship classes that are happening might want to gravitate toward the high-tech manufacturing areas. I know that there are quite a few startup companies that are doing, say, apps for your phone, but perhaps not in this manufacturing area.
Iowa's always been a place of entrepreneurism, though, Joe. You think of, well, you think about John Deere or Eugene Suckup or Gary Vermeer, or, you know, there's always been...
Or Ryko.
Or Ryko, yeah.
Ryko was
right next door.
Yeah, Ryko was founded by Jim Nelson, who was a mechanical engineer, graduate of Iowa State.
Yeah. And so there's always been entrepreneurism. I think the example of Rooster Sports, though, is an area where we need to do better. Here's a guy, T.J. Tollickson, that's a leader in his field, is as connected in Greater Des Moines or Iowa as anyone, an incredible guy. And he, you know, I think an early issue for Rooster Sports was capital. And thanks to TJ's dedication and everything else, they've overcome that hump and they're doing very, very well. But we could do better when it comes to venture capital in Iowa and assistance for entrepreneurs when it comes to financing. But the good news is we're going to see more entrepreneurs and all less.
And any thoughts on state incentive programs? I mean, in the area of manufacturing, do these programs seem to be sufficient? I mean, areas like the research activities tax credit, other incentives.
That's what I was going to start with, Joe. These guys need to respond, but I'll say two things. One, organization like the National Association of Manufacturers, which is a great organization on the federal level. We always think if the state's going to spend money, it should spend it on people, on training. Some of the things Ron talked about, get people into these programs, get their skills up so they can be helpful to a Ryko or a Deere. Secondly, though, I'm not sure we need a whole lot of anything else, but that research activities tax and the single factor formula are two of the best things Iowa does to help, well, business in general, but manufacturers in particular. Research activities tax credit is a great incentive to have your R&D work done here. The single factor formula is an incredible incentive when it comes to manufacturers and their sales, particularly if the majority of them is outside the state. So those are two big things the state shouldn't change. Whether they do anything else or not, they shouldn't change those two.
And for people who aren't familiar with single activity,
the single factor formula. Single factor formula. In many states, corporate income taxes are based on three things: your employment, your physical plant, and your sales. In Iowa, they're based only on the amount of your Iowa. The corporate sales tax or corporate income tax is based only on the amount of your Iowa sales, and that's a big boon here. More states are coming to that method of taxation and moving away from it, and we ought to keep that here.
Joe, the thing I would add is to recognize how well the state of Iowa is run, and how that plays into companies that are searching for locations when they make decisions on where to locate. You know, we don't have a huge pension liability hanging over our head. Yeah, exactly. It's very well run. It's run business-like, which I think gives us all more comfort as we look to grow manufacturing and grow jobs in Iowa.
Is there anything out there that you guys have an idea on, or something that you wish you saw the state doing that would help you guys out?
Well, I'll tell you one thing the state is starting to focus more and more on is through the STEM Council. So the more STEM activity in the K-12 system on up through higher ed is important. But this whole internet availability, speed, and cost, you know, the governor's got a commission that's looking at it through the STEM Council. They've made some recommendations, some of which is to be able to rent out pieces of the ICN. But we need to get better high-speed internet at a low cost everywhere in the state. You know, and Connect Iowa shows there are some tough areas in Iowa where you do not get good connectivity. And so any Iowan, anywhere in the state, needs to be able to get onto the highest quality internet if they're going to do business. And it's for a company to go into some small town to be an entrepreneur, you can't do it without internet access. We've got the Greater Des Moines Partnership and others that are sitting there ready to help small businesses do more in the global exporting realm. We just had a meeting yesterday where we're going to help provide interns to companies that want to do more exports internationally. I mean, we want these companies to do well, but unless you've got very high-speed internet at a very low price, you can't help businesses and you can't help people in the inner city where money is an issue, but we need to let them get on the internet so they can gain the benefits that we take advantage of every day.
Absolutely agree, Rob. And it also goes to quality of life for Iowans when they're not at work. So, you know, that is the infrastructure of the 21st century.
And speaking of infrastructure, then, and I wanted to be sure to ask a question about globalization and perhaps some of the things that you're seeing affect Iowa manufacturing as a result, you know, good and bad of globalization. Any thoughts in that direction?
So globalization is a challenge, but both as a customer and a supplier. Those extended supply chains are very difficult to manage sometimes. It means we have assets tied up for weeks or months while they're flowing from the supplier across the world into Iowa. And it presents challenges as we export products, because as products become more complex, we also have to export the knowledge of how to utilize those products to our customers' best benefit. So, you know, there's great opportunities, but logistics cost is not free. We don't have a Star Trek teleporter or whatever they call it yet. And
probably being worked on it.
Yeah, they could very well be. I'll stop by this afternoon. But you know, there's still the physical reality of how do you move goods around the world. Services can be different, particularly if it's information. That's a very different game than what we play. But there's great opportunities. Just as an example, most of the world's cotton is still picked by hand, even though we build a cotton picker at John Deere Des Moines Works that will change that entire process by several orders of magnitude. In a day, one of our cotton pickers can pick more cotton than an individual would probably pick in their lifetime. Just to give you a sense of what several orders of magnitude might be. So and there's incredible opportunities for RICO, because guess what? It doesn't make any difference where you live. People would like to have a nice, clean car and have it, you know, and have it as convenient as RICO's products will make it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, global expansion is a major focus for us. We're once again a relatively small company, but we're the largest provider of car wash equipment in North America. We have about a 48% share of the market. So for us, that incremental market point, you know, going from 48 to 49 or 50%, very expensive to do in North America. Clearly now, our direction is to begin to move overseas. And in fact, just this year, we acquired our first company outside of the United States, a company up in Canada, and then that's beginning the process, and we've got letters of intent right now to acquire 2 more companies outside the United States. So global expansion and globalization is a very important issue. And for manufacturers, one of the hugest issues, or the largest issues that we have, is that the American-based manufacturers had about a 20% cost disadvantage today compared to our competitors around the country, around the world. And that's driven largely by 2 factors: taxes and regulation. Tort law reform would also be pretty nice. I'd like to throw that one in there. But really the 2 biggest drivers are there. And when I talk about a 20% cost disadvantage, by the way, I'm not talking about labor. Our labor costs might be higher in an absolute dollar sense compared to some of the other markets overseas, but when you factor in productivity, the American worker today is enormously affordable. That's the reason why you start to see the big struggle about, well, do I bring my manufacturing operations back to the United States? Because labor is no longer the big factor. It's really taxation and regulation that's really killing us. In fact, I was just explaining to Rob at a meeting just earlier this week, we've come to a very difficult decision. We're about to exercise, we're about to build a 100,000 square foot plant outside of the United States, up in Canada, and the largest driver for that, it means 100 jobs, not here in Iowa, but up in Canada, in the province of Ontario. There was 3 primary drivers for that. The first was the labor constraint here. There's a much larger labor pool, available labor pool of skilled labor in the market that we're looking at moving to. The second, though, and a major factor, was taxes, a combination of both state as well as federal taxes. There was a huge tax advantage of doing business up in Canada, manufacturing there, compared to here in the United States. And then finally, the third reason is incentives. And we've talked about the wonderful job the state of Iowa has done. And the state of Iowa really has done, under the governor and the legislature, a tremendous job of making this a very business-friendly environment. But when you take a look at what the competition's doing, whether it's another state inside the United States or another country, the competition is fierce. And the incentives that are being thrown around to draw you to another market are really quite exciting. And frankly, the state of Iowa had a major win earlier this year, and that was to bring a company, an Egyptian-based company, here to the state of Iowa. We threw millions of dollars at that company. The state of Iowa has given me $25,000 in training grants so far. That's all I qualify for. I'm not feeling the love, because I'm already here.
You mentioned reshoring, and I'm just curious, Mike, if that's something you guys have seen some more of here?
It is. People, Chris, when they think of it, they think of companies like Deere and others, large manufacturers that bring operations back if ever they took them away. But smaller manufacturers they hadn't done that in the first place. Now they're able to compete even better here, although some of the factors that Steve cites are real issues. When it comes to this whole globalization issue, though, I think that if you talk to a manufacturer anywhere in Iowa, they'd see a lot of opportunity. I'll give you 2 greater Des Moines examples. Keystone Electrical Manufacturing Company, they make electric control systems, and then Accumold we talked about up in Ankeny. Keystone's here in Des Moines. Both those companies are doing, they've got a lot of sales outside the country. They didn't have that a few years ago, and that's mirrored by just about every manufacturer in the state. No kidding, a lot of smaller manufacturers with operations outside the country now that they didn't have. So there are certainly a lot of issues with globalization, but I think most folks that talk to us would say they'll focus on the sales opportunity there more than anything else.
What are your thoughts on threats that Iowa manufacturing needs to look out for? I mean, there was obviously the mention of lack of competitiveness generally between the U.S. and Canada, but what other threats perhaps are out there?
Well, I think another one that, and this is at the federal level, is there are today literally dozens of trade agreements that are being negotiated between countries to improve reduce the resistance of trade between countries and regions. And the United States is not participating in virtually any of them. In fact, to the best of my knowledge, I think right now the United States is actively engaged in just one of the regional global trade agreement discussions. And that's going to, we need at the federal level much greater participation there to make it easier for us to be able to export our products to these other markets. Within the EU today, it's extraordinarily easy, and there's tremendous advantages of building your manufacturing capability within the EU so that you can trade within that union very easily. In fact, there's if you build a plant in Italy today, why you'd want to do that, I'm not sure, but if you did, there's tremendous incentives being thrown at manufacturers by the EU to build a plant, and then once you're there, to be the advantage of being able to distribute your product throughout the Western European region is significantly advantageous versus trying to export from the States.
So perhaps a little bit more cooperation among the states to have the U.S. Acting as a united.
Well, yeah, we can trade within the states, obviously, very easily today. I'm talking about the ability to be able to get to Asia, get to the European marketplace. Eastern Europe is growing very, very rapidly. A tremendous opportunity for your country as well as for your company as well as ours. There's some markets right now that are very, very exciting that are difficult to get into with a manufacturing base here in the States. And it's because our federal government, the Commerce Department in particular, is not actively engaged in a lot of these trade agreement discussions that are taking place around the world.
It's very interesting.
Joe, I'm certainly no expert on our education system, but I believe the biggest threat that we have to our competitiveness is educational scores that are dropping compared to many, many other countries around the world. I think in math we're 25th, in reading we're 17th. Countries like Finland, South Korea, even Vietnam, Indonesia, they are making orders of magnitude. I keep using that word because there's some major changes going on. And they've been at it for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, tweaking their education system in order to produce students that graduate with much higher skills, just general learning skills and general aptitudes than we do. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. We could probably spend the next 4 hours debating on, what we would need to do as a country to help resolve this and deliver high school graduates, to example, to a great school like DMAC, who are better prepared to learn and go farther in their next 2 years than they are today.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on threats?
Well, there's always a threat of protectionism from countries that we would like to export to. Russia comes to mind. It's one of the BRIC countries, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China. Russia is a country that can decide this afternoon to put an import tariff on that it's in effect law tomorrow morning that can change our manufacturing strategies, whether it's Ryco or Vermeer or John Deere, whoever it may be. So there's always those individual country threats as they look to protect their own internal manufacturing businesses.
Yeah, and that goes to the bigger issue of uncertainty. Uncertainty is a big problem when you're trying to plan and grow a business. And whether it's uncertainty because there's a lack of rule of law, such in a country like China or Russia, or it's uncertainty in our own tax policies and regulatory policies here in the United States, that makes it very, very difficult to build and execute on an aggressive growth strategy, whether you're a manufacturer or a service provider or any kind of business.
Well, every sector is subject to competition. I mean, within our college, we're looking at, what's the disruptive technology that could impact any piece of our business? It's the same way with every business. I mean, it's always competition. Jim Collins in his book, How the Mighty Fall. I mean, Iowa is pretty successful right now. We're riding high, but there's no guarantee that's going to continue any more than there's any guarantee that any of our businesses are. I mean, there's competition for every dollar, and so it's marketing, it's quality, it's workforce, but it's always the competition. Our education system, I mean, they're under the gun. I mean, Iowa's education system was tops for years and years, and we got used to it. Well, we're not tops anymore. So what do we do to get it back up? I think the governor and the legislature are doing the right things, but we need to get behind them to push it. I know a lot of teachers. I mean, they work very hard. They invest their own money in their kids, but we need to keep focusing on it because in the end, it's all about competition. There's a national group called Opportunity Nation. It promotes opportunity and economic mobility nationally. They grade every state on an opportunity index of education, workforce, health, and a number of other characters. And Iowa just moved up from 7th to 6th nationally. 6 of the top 10 states in the country on this opportunity index are from the Midwest. It rates every county in every state. So you can look at the county where you were born and see, well, how is that county compared to its neighbors or the state or the nation? And Time Magazine did a deal, I'm probably a competitor to the Business Record, but did a study that showed that the biggest determinant of how successful you'll be in life is the zip code where you were born. Well, that shouldn't be. We should all have the opportunity to move forward. And, you know, Governor Branstad has embraced it. I mean, clearly we're all embracing it. It's all about creating those opportunities and then having the individuals accept that challenge and take advantage of what's in front of them.
That really takes us through the major issues that.
I'm curious if you guys have any questions for each other at all, from anything you've heard. You've done all the question asking. So.
It's exciting to hear about all the great things that are happening here with manufacturing, and the future looks bright if we don't screw it up. If we get about solving these workforce issues and dealing with uncertainty. I had that down too, Steve. I think that's a big one. So if we keep working, Chris, we ought to be doing all right.
And we will.
Yeah.
So I think one of the strengths that we have in Iowa, you know, there's always a question of attitude versus aptitude, right? And the Midwestern values and attitudes of folks from Iowa are a competitive advantage. Mm-hmm. Our challenge is to be sure they have the aptitude and they get the opportunity to acquire the skills that they need so that we can compete effectively. But in terms of base feedstock, if you will, this is an incredible place to start and grow a business.
Well, I just want to give you guys each one opportunity to kind of have a. Joe, you have any other questions that you'd like to ask?
No, I think that we're good on that.
Well, what I'd like to do is just give you guys each an opportunity to kind of give a closing thought or a takeaway for the audience, and we'll start here with Rob.
Well, I think Iowa's a great place to be, and I wouldn't want to be in a community college system anywhere else in the world other than DMAC and in Iowa. We've got, as I said earlier, we've got the right people at the table. We're heading in the same direction, and we want to be partners. And as I always say, we're open for business, and we mean business. And we want to make sure that our students have the opportunity to get good jobs, particularly middle-class jobs and above, so that they can be on the same pathway that all of us have been on. We took advantage of the opportunities we had, and we've been successful, but we were in an environment where that could happen. So Iowa needs to continue to create that environment. And then buy John Deere. Wash your cars at right. Be an ABI member.
Yeah, so I was going to say great comments. Now I have to say those were outstanding.
There you go.
And I agree with absolutely everything you've said. Iowa's an incredible place to grow up, to raise a family, to launch or build a business. And manufacturing, I have to put one more plug in for manufacturing. There is no better career than manufacturing. It's really value creation, and it's got an economic multiplier that makes a difference for a lot of people that go well beyond what we do in any one of our factories.
I think I'd take it back, Chris, to where we started. If you're a reader of the Business Record or a viewer of this roundtable, but you're not involved in manufacturing, this is why this matters. Because even if you work at one of the great financial services firms in Des Moines or some other place that's not a manufacturer, your community depends on manufacturing. Manufacturing brings, as we've talked about, the best jobs with the best pay, with the best benefits, with that multiplier effect. So whether or not you're a manufacturer, if you're watching this or reading about it, manufacturing is important to you. We need to remember that.
That's right. And I would amplify on everything that these gentlemen have said. Thanks again for the opportunity to participate. The one thing that really comes to my mind is the tremendous vitality. The vitality in the community level in Iowa, and vitality and within the economic environment and in the manufacturing environment within the state. It's really got a lot of things. We've got a lot of things going for us. We have our challenges, but we have really a great cooperative relationship with the legislature and with the governor's office. We've got smart people working on these issues. I'm absolutely convinced that there's an exciting future for not just manufacturing, but for the state of Iowa as we look ahead.
Thank you very much.
Well, that'll do it for us. We're out of time, and to our audience, thank you for joining us as well. If this spurred a story idea, or you want to reach out to either myself or Joe, our contact information will be up on the screen there. Feel free to reach out and call or email. We're always looking for story ideas, and we got plenty from today, and we really appreciate all of your help today and coming in and helping us understand manufacturing a little bit better. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks.